Welcome to Exploring Anime with Friends, a JMO for Real podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. I'm your host, JMO. And today's friend is my guest host, Mark. Hello, how's it going, Mark?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Excited for this episode today and excited to have you on for the first time. In today's episode, we will be introducing you to the world of Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, a slice of life fantasy adventure anime with elements of drama and sub-themes of love, friendship, loss, and end of life. Released in September of 2023. For the next 20 to 25 minutes, we will be exploring the first season of Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. First, we will learn a little about Frieren, the elven mage, and discover her unique personality. Next, we will explore the two journeys that have brought meaning to her life, the one in the past with Himmel the hero, and their current one with Fern. Finally, we will focus on the final arc of the season, the Mage's Exam. And remember, if you like what you hear today, follow us on social media, linked in the show notes. So just, Mark, a little bit about yourself and why you love anime before we jump into Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
I really got into anime because I feel like a lot of Western animations, especially in like the comedy part, is very kind of shallow and very sitcom-y. I kind of miss like the very compelling kind of storytelling and meaningful things and feeling something from it. And I started getting a lot of that from anime. Started off on JoJo. The memes were great on that. Yeah, it like I just feel like in the East it's just a more mature storytelling kind of style
I
than
definitely get
what
that.
we have here in the West.
No, I definitely get that. And especially true with Frieren. So dive in. You were the one who chose this one for this season as our guest host. What is it about Frieren that you love the most? Tell us a little bit about Frieren.
Frieren is an elven mage. She was part of a team of adventurers that defeated the Demon King. Her personality is very interesting, being an elf who's lived for 1,000 years. She doesn't take things too seriously, especially the passage of time. She's really laid back and off in her own world. This makes her have different values than someone who takes life very seriously. And she really enjoys sleeping in too.
Yeah, she doesn't think twice about taking 10 years to complete a task. Yeah, she's in no rush to get the day started because of elves live to be thousands of years in this universe. Like I guess we don't have specifics. We know that there are elves much older than Frieren, and she's 1,000 years old. So again, I don't think we have any specifics on how long elves live. It's just a very long time. But they view things very different. Though I'm sure Frieren is one of the few that actually sleeps in the morning every morning, right? Like I didn't get that impression off the other elves that I met that they are as slow to wake up.
Yeah, my impression is that even for an elf 1,000 years, she's still a bit like a teenager for an elf.
Though sometimes it almost feels like she's an older lady, right? Sometimes she's a teen, a small child. Sometimes she's an older lady. No, yes, maybe so.
Yeah, I think so. I think that really makes her relatable, passing out early and then refusing to wake up like a little child. And then she also gets into a place where she's very thoughtful and then like thrifty like an old lady.
Yeah. And one of the other things we do need to point out about her, she is kind of a bit of a demon slayer. I know it doesn't come up too often, but the moments that it does come up in, she has tailored her magic to be more effective against demon kind than anything else. It's not that important to the story itself, but it has moments where it's important.
Yeah, that's true. The magic that she specialized in is considered like a basic kind of magic by a lot of people, which helps them underestimate her.
Yeah, that and the fact that she's always suppressing her magic. Probably the thing that makes her the most elite is the fact that no one knows how dangerous she is just by looking at her because she has such intense mana control that she can hide it. She can basically hide that she has any from many different people. Something that is really important, what that we'll be talking about later in the show when they're doing the Mage's exam.
Kind of hilarious sometimes to see her opponents think that she's a very low level person and then she just wipes the floor with them.
Yeah, definitely. In particular, going back to the Demon Slayer portion, but when she was in the arc in the middle of the season, when she ran into one of the like demon empresses, she challenged her to a battle of aura, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, I win now." Like,
This other
because
demon was supposed to be so clever, that Frieren's is bigger, and it's kind of a cool payoff to be like, oh well, this person's definitely in for it.
was one of those things when I was watching it. I was kind of expecting Frieren to just turn the table in a snap, but at the same time, they try a little to make you think that there's a chance she's in some trouble. But the fact that she was relatively unfazed, like in almost every aspect of life, just made you
Yeah,
realize, this is no sweat.
I think showing her being unfazed all the time helps with the things that are at stake because you don't know whether she's overpowered or she's just not taking it serious.
Or if it's something different, just a different worldview that we pointed out before. A worldview that has been changing because over the course of her first journey with Himmel the hero, Heidker the drunken priest, and Eisen the dwarven warrior, she takes a lot of things for granted in their adventure. The whole premise of Frieren Beyond Journey's End is her reflecting on the past and learning from it while living it through in the present, realizing that
Exactly.
these were the relationships that meant everything to her, but she didn't know it at the time.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty much the theme of the whole anime. She's nearly immortal. Loved ones and friends come in and out like a blip on a radar. Starts to learn to take those moments and appreciate them, even though they're fleeting moments.
One of the things that really just kind of set it up was her saying very casually how they'll meet for the next meteor shower 50 years in the future. They're all looking at her, and it's kind of like, yeah, no, we might survive to that point. And at that point in time, she starts to realize the difference in their lifespan and hers. And when they get together in the future, Himmel's an old man and on the verge of death. Her best friend, right? Himmel was her best friend, but she didn't know
Yeah.
it until he was dead. And that's just that's the dynamic that really strikes home with the series for me. Her relationship with Himmel and the message it's sending to us: be appreciative for the people in your life now before it's too late.
Yeah, because it might come to a time where you realize, I don't know if Frieren even realized that she loved Himmel until after he was gone. Almost everything she does in the anime is to honor his memory because she loves him.
That's part of her journey with both Fern and Stark as we go on later. But let's before we jump to that point in time, are there some of the moments of the past journey that were told in flashbacks throughout the story? Are there some moments that really stuck out to you more than the others?
I mean, there was a lot of really cool fight scenes, and I think there was one moment where Eisen said something wasn't saying right way to the king, and he almost got him and Himmel executed.
Yeah. The scene that I found most interesting was the fact that they didn't talk about like Himmel was always the true hero. It didn't matter that he wasn't able to retrieve the sword of the heroes from the cave. They always viewed him as the true hero to the point where Heidker didn't even tell Fern, his apprentice, that Himmel didn't get the sword. He actually left it out of everything that he told her. Frieren barely remembered it, it seemed. It's one of the things that it didn't matter what the sword said. Himmel was that hero. Heidker, Eisen, and Frieren acknowledged it, and they were the only ones that knew that he didn't have it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and Himmel is definitely painted as like a genuine hero who cares for the people that he's helping.
a bit of a flirt, but at the same time, at the
Yeah,
end of the day, his
I
heart
think
was
he's very curious on Frieren's outlook, so he tends to make little comments here and there to try to bring her focus to like the present, but I don't think she realizes that until he's gone.
And if you're already getting hooked, we recommend that you watch it for yourself on Crunchyroll, home to over 1,000 anime series and simulcast, both subbed and dubbed. Website is listed in the show notes. Also, remember to check us out on social media, like, subscribe, and follow. Let's jump back in, though. We've referenced Fern and Stark a couple of times. One of the things I want to point out is the unique teachers that Fern and Stark had before they met Frieren. Do we just want to dive right in? Like, who was Fern the apprentice of?
Yeah, Fern was the apprentice of Heiter. Frieren calls him the corrupt priest. Uh,
Let's talk about that a little really quick. Well, why is he the corrupt priest?
Well, he's the priest in the group and has like the divine connection and healing and all that. But he likes to drink on the side and enjoy a few vices. But I think when Frieren
Party.
teases him about being a corrupt priest, she kind of says it in affectionate kind of way
Yeah,
because I don't think Frieren really buys the thing that he worships anyway.
she didn't buy it at all until they were basically given what the roadmap to heaven, more or less. And that's how this second journey begins, right?
Yeah.
With the end goal being to get to heaven, to see Himmel one more time. It's incredibly poetic how these two stories weave in and out. And Stark, he's the apprentice of Eisen. Eisen was a rough teacher and a gruff teacher when it came to him. But at the end of the day, Eisen taught Stark a lot of things, and Frieren and Fern helped bring the confidence out in Stark to where he could do it. But we kind of hurdled Fern there. But tell us a little about Fern and how awesome she is.
Yeah, Fern's great. She gets adopted by Heiter because he finds her after a battle in which she's orphaned. He takes pity on her and adopts her. He raises her for a long time and gets very close to her, but Heiter knows he's reaching the end of his life, and it just so happens that Frieren's visiting, so he takes the chance to try to have Frieren train Fern.
Yeah, and he kind of tricks her into it. He has her do a very long, tedious, menial task that ultimately has no value in the end to get her to spend the time with Fern. And at that point in time, it seems like he gave her just enough time for Frieren and Fern to decide to end up on the journey with each other. One thing of note, power-wise, Fern is also a mage like Frieren, but she's even better with her mana control than Frieren is. She can hide it to absolute zero, which is something that is kind of really scary when it comes to her, especially when dealing with other mages. Stark, once again, is a warrior trained by Eisen. He's a two-handed weapon guy.
Well, we can say a few more things about Fern.
We could say a few more things about Fern.
She's a bit hard-headed. She's very impatient, wants to do things her way, which rubs against not only Frieren but Stark. And Stark, who we first run into when they're visiting a village, he usually comes off kind of like a coward because he doesn't want to fight this one enemy because he doesn't want to die.
It's a pretty powerful enemy, too, to be fair. So,
There's a scene where Frieren meets up with Eisen. He wants to also have Frieren train Stark. It's kind of cool that we get these two meetings with these two past people in the party. Now that they're moving on, they're passing down their students to Frieren, so it's almost like a connection to that past party.
yeah, at the same time, too, it's almost like it's two parties of three because it's Eisen that put into Stark's life, it's Hyder that put into Fern's life, and it's Himmel that put into Frieren's life.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's very fascinating, and when push came to shove, Stark took down that powerful enemy in one hit, and he was screaming for backup and everything. And Fruin's like, "I think it's already dead."
Yeah, that was
Just
a pretty funny part. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just kind of like, wow, he needed the confidence to be push him over the edge, and it's not like they were going rah rah and cheering him on, but the very matter of fact way of Freeman's approach helps you to realize who you are very quickly.
Yeah, he overcame the cowardness that he had and he realized, he can be confident in himself. And he ended up joining Frieren and Vern.
And they face a lot of obstacles along the way, but eventually they get to a point where they realize, oh, in order to go any further on this journey, we need to have a class one mage in our party. Because in order to get to a certain part of the continent, you have to have a class one mage in your party. Frieren isn't even certified at this point in time, and Fern is only a class three mage. One of them, or both of them, has to pass this mage's trials to become a class one mage. And that is where the first season concludes in a small little mini arc that really kind of determines the fate of their journey moving forward. It's done in a series of three different tests. Let's just rip the band aid off right now. I know we're hurdling the first two stages, but let's talk about why the third stage just got rushed and who it was who took charge.
One funny thing about the third arc is that Fern, she wants to pass the test to be a class one mage, but Frieren kind of joins along because she's so old that no one recognizes her current mage credentials, like her card thing. And she's like, I guess I gotta do this.
So the one who is in charge of the whole thing is Sairi. She's actually Friren's grand teacher. Frieren learned
Yeah,
from someone who learned directly from Sairi.
Frieren learned from Blamma, who was a student of Ciri, an elf who basically lives as long as Frieren, but she seems to be a bit more older in elf years.
Definitely is. We don't have an age for her, to my knowledge, at this point in time yet. Yet we just know she's older than Frieren. Flemma was a human. Ciri, raised on a whim, for some reason just feels very disappointed in. Frieren stood up for Flemma and her legacy, and now Ciri doesn't like Frieren too. She thought that Friren's presence in this exam was making it too easy for contestants, so she jumped in to intervene and hosted the third stage herself. And really, that's kind of all we're going to say about the third stage, right? We're not going to go too much into that.
Yeah, I mean, Ciri's like the leader of the Mages Guild. She's like super powerful when she
Probably
steps
most
in.
powerful person in the world,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. She holds this and gives out reward for participation along with the rank one status.
And that's actually a good way to tie in something that we didn't cover when we were talking about Frieren and Vern's journey. The reason why she has so much disdain for Frieren is because Frieren came out and told her favorite spell is one that makes a field of flowers. One of the things that is really important for Frieren on Frieren and Vern's and Stark's journey has been tracking down spells just for the sake of having them. Ones that can keep clothes freshly scented and cleaned, others that help you see through clothes. But
Yeah,
right?
that was a pretty funny part. They were gonna use it, but Fern poured it out. You
Man,
know.
Fern, that old prude, that old 17-year-old prude, right?
Yeah. The funny thing, there's a tension between Fern and Frieren. Fern's very impatient and wants to meet goals and do things. Frieren just kind of wants to wander around and look for seemingly useless spells and do little odd jobs here and there. It really comes to a head. One of the things to appease Fern is that Frieren agrees to take her to the mage's exam.
And it's funny thing, like I know that we started with the third stage, and I'm just gonna go to the second. We're gonna do the mage exam backwards. Frieren is looking through the room for every last little bit of treasure because they're going through a ruins, a dungeon that no one has ever completed before, which is kind of awesome. That's the second stage, and they have to make it to the final floor. Frieren's going through with a fine-tooth comb to find everything that's there because it's the journey, it's the fascination, it's the treasure. It doesn't matter if the treasure has any value as long as it has value to her. And Vern's sitting there just judging Frieren. The one who's in charge of the second leg of the exam looks and it's like, I just don't get it. And Fern's like, well, yeah, no, neither do I. And she's like, no, it's you I don't get. Like, where's your passion? Where's your joy? Why do you even want to be a mage? Do you even care? And I feel like at that point in time, it was a little bit of a turning point for Fern. And just like Frieren has learned to see things differently because of Himmel, Fern learns to see things differently because of the second instructor.
Exact gives her the catharsis to realize and get like an insight into Frieren because a lot of times Fern is just frustrated with her.
We covered that important part. Let's just jump back to the first stage of the exam.
The whole exam arc is pretty interesting because you're basically for the first part of the anime you're really tied in closely with few characters, and during this mage exam you really see a lot of characters introduced, very interesting characters too. There's this girl named Ubel and she's an assassin. She's got quite a character and
And
for
her whole purpose
carefree.
is kind of like to corrupt the one who she's when working with the whole time, right?
Yeah. And then there's Werble and Denkin. Denkin just wants to pass the thing so that he can see his wife's grave in another land. It just sets up all of these character arcs that didn't exist before. The first trial is fun because they have to find like this bird. Travels the speed of sound, and for some reason it's, if you're familiar with video games, it's like a PvPvE arena where the PvE part is finding the bird, but you can also attack the other mages at the same time. So they start to create all kinds of weird alliances. You can see them start to develop the characters that way. And
Yeah, and another thing to point out about the PvE portion of it is that the environment that they're in has been sealed off with a magical seal. There's a magical bubble around it. Water is not coming in. Something that's really important to catching these birds is the use of water. and the rivers have been dried up because of the barrier and the lake's getting smaller. So, and being that these birds avoid all magical energy, I thought it was really creative, the plan that Frieren then came up with her teammates. But they had a cool idea to be able to isolate all of these birds to the same location. And doing that, they were able to get theirs. There was some back and forth. At that point in time, Frieren's team battled Denkin's team, and there was some fighting going along with the person who was the chief guard at the of the northern post versus Fern's team. And this is probably the arc that shows more combat than the whole rest of the first season combined. But it's
Yeah,
still
definitely.
true to the story itself. Denkin's story kind of fits with the general overall theme about valuing life. It shows all of these characters, even if they stray off the end of life theme, they all show true personalities. They feel like real people.
Yeah, and when the fighting happens and there's all the action, it's not just like the action for action's sake. Every single battle that happens takes an opportunity to show how the character thinks and develop. It feels more meaningful that way than just having just like a slugfest out of nowhere.
And it really builds up to the second point of the exam, because now they can all, in the second stage of the exam, they can either all work together or try to work alone, because they have to make it to the bottom of this dungeon in order to that's never been conquered before. And one of the things that, I'm just going to say it, everyone who enters has a doppelganger of them made that's waiting for
Yeah.
the group somewhere.
Yeah,
And
and most importantly, that includes Frieren too. And
yeah, and
if
and the pacifist who's in charge, who's not quite a pacifist in her doppelganger form. So eventually, when the group couldn't go any further because, well, Frieren was in front of them, and Frieren didn't know how to beat herself, surmised that all the doppelgangers were closing in on them. They made their plan by figuring out which one of them would they least want to face, and they just went through. It was very meticulous. Like all of the what we learned about their powers early on, we saw them work together to put a plan to overcome those obstacles. Like
yeah, I mean, it was pretty brilliant because these people that were, a lot of them were fighting against each other in the previous trial, are now giving tips on how to beat them to other people. There's a lot at stake.
you know what? We're not going to tell you who defeats Frieren in the end, to how they figure out to take Frieren's doppelganger down, because why would we ruin that surprise? Instead, we're going to make you watch Frieren Beyond's Journeys, and because it is that great of an anime. So once again, to go over everything, we took a look at Frieren, the Elven Mage, and her very unique personality. Then we looked at the original journey with Himmel and Hiker and Eisen, and then took it into the present journey with Fern and with Stark. And finally, we took a glance at this mage's exam that really kind of determines the fate of so many, but especially our main protagonist as we move forward into season 2. Honestly, this is a really excellent anime. You need to watch it. You definitely need to go on the Crunchyroll, look at it. It's not too many episodes. I think it's 28 episodes. It's a couple weeks of watching max, right?
It's and
Yeah.
it's great to watch too. Every second of it is just very entertaining. It runs the whole thing with it has some humor, it has a little bit of slice of life, and then it has some action, and it has a little something for everyone.
So tell us, where does this rank for you? Why do you love Free Beyond Journey's End so much, Mark?
It's definitely top tier for me. I think it's a great story that touches on existentialism and what it means to be nearly immortal, see loved ones and friends come in and out, and instead of taking those moments for granted, to appreciate things better and realizing in the big picture it's the small things that matter. So it's a very special anime to watch because it's so unique.
It made you feel things, and that's awesome. I hope you guys had as much fun exploring the first season of Frieren Beyond Journey's End as we did, and enjoy watching this anime. Have a good one.
Bye.
So if you like what you heard today, make sure to listen to us on Apple and Spotify. All of our podcasts are there. All of the J-Mill for Real podcasts are on there. Check us out on social media and interact with us there. It is linked in the show notes. Until next time, this has been Exploring Anime with Friends, a J-Mill for Real podcast. Let's explore together.